like back
It
up.
says, it says live.
All right. Doesn't say it on my end yet. I'm just a little delayed. I don't know why. Can everybody hear me? Kathleen, can you hear me? I know you're in the chat. Marissa, Vanessa, can everybody hear me? So I wanted to thank everyone for being here tonight, and for those that will watch this later. Like I said, I have two guests actually. A lot of you may know Mindy. She's usually in the Monday mornings with Toddy, and most of the things that we do or I do. So Mindy's here, and my very special guest is Kristin Oyen. She was Corey's pre-K teacher, and she really got to know Corey before Corey learned what hell was. I guess that's an easy way to say it. Before Chris Greger came into Corey's life, Kristin met Corey, and he was, well, he was alive for one. We'll say that. But anyway, Kristin, just you can, let people know how you met Corey. I mean, I'll just start off by saying, Corey came to live with me kind of abruptly. I was getting divorced from my first husband, and I lived in New Jersey, and he lived at our house in Florida, and Bree lived in the house in Florida with Corey. And I don't know what happened one night. My soon-to-be ex-husband decided he was packing up and moving to New Jersey with some hoe. And so he therefore dropped Bree and Corey off at my younger daughter's apartment and just kind of left them. So that's how Corey came to stay with me so abruptly. I wasn't expecting it. I was living with my new husband and his parents. I was only working 3 days a week. This was all it just happened suddenly. So anyway, that's how Corey came to live in Jefferson Township, New Jersey with me. And then Bree eventually came later on as soon as I got things sorted out and got my own apartment. But anyway, that's how Kristin met Corey. We registered him for pre-K, and she was the chosen one. So Kristin, go ahead and tell. I just started not calling you Miss Oyen, by the way.
I was thinking about that before. I was like, she always calls me Miss Oyen.
So anyway, I'll let Kristin start by letting you all know how she met Corey.
So I have a bizarre memory. So I remember very specific events. I've taught a lot of kids over the years, but usually I can remember all the names, all the faces, the family members. So I remember, I would be getting new kids after the school year started, because once you turn 3, you can start preschool, or you move from elsewhere. And once you're all set up and evaluated, if needed, you start. So we were in this wonderful little school that has since closed in Jefferson. So there's 2 sides to Jefferson, but our school took all of the preschool students at that time. So I remember the staff said, we have a meeting. You're going to be getting this little guy. We're going to go to the meeting. He's going to be there. You're going to hang out, and kind of explain the situation. He came to grandmother at the last minute, and she had to scramble, and here we were. So usually when these meetings start, you're like, all right, who am I getting here? Like, are they going to be happy to see me? Are they going to be wild? Are they crying? Are they playing? Are they stuck to their grown-up? So we get to the library and we're on the rug. And I remember the case manager talking to Rebecca, and Corey and I just hanging out at the carpet playing like ice break, don't break the ice. And, they talked, and they're like, he's potty trained. And Rebecca always reminds me, like, you were so excited he was potty trained. I'm like, yeah, because I had to potty train half the class with me and my paras. And you've got 9, 10 kids and 3 adults, and this one's in diapers, and this one's in diapers, and this one's going every 10 minutes. And preschool is a bizarre world. So he was potty trained, and I was like, yes. Little did I know we would have a whole other little man to learn and figure out, and he had great skills. Being potty trained was just one of those things to show how developmentally on par he truly was. He just needed that language. And I always tell people, because they're like, oh, you were like a special ed preschool teacher. Every single preschool child that is 3 years old to 5 years old when they can exit preschool has the same diagnosis: preschool child with a disability. It doesn't matter if they're diagnosed with autism. It doesn't matter if they're diagnosed ADHD, if it's apraxia, if it's just a cognitive delay, whatever it is, whatever diagnosis will come in kindergarten, they're all on the same playing field. So Corey, preschool child with a disability, needed speech and language therapy. He did not need any PT. His gross motor on point. And then he didn't need OT, but we had to clean up his motor skills as far as like writing, drawing, all that kind of stuff. He's a lefty. So that year I actually had a couple lefties. I think there were like 4 lefties, which is crazy. But so he had to figure out how to function in a right-handed world, and he figured it out. And I always say, he started without language, but his language definitely became very colorful as time went on. He was just loud and outgoing and busy and bold and wild child, and he was fast, like one of the fastest kids I've ever met. And he was very intense. He had a big personality, and he needed to move his body, he needed to go, he needed to learn all the things just like the other preschool kids. So we started in October, and then we had Christmas, and we came back, and it was like a little family. That full day class, we were together from morning till dismissal. And he definitely was one of my little wild boys. And I always am partial to those little wild boys and those little free spirits. And he definitely, as he developed and gained more language and his skills really emerged, he showed all that he was capable of learning and doing. And he a lot of other people might look at a kid like that and say like, oh my gosh, how do you have him in your class? But like for me, those kids are they are where they need to be when they're meant to be there at sometimes.
Kristin, I was wondering, maybe Rebecca could just explain a little bit. Corey needed some speech therapy due to some hearing. That the background.
Yeah, so as far as like auditory and speech and language and processing and how you're able to articulate sounds.
Yeah, because he had fluid in his ear.
He was prone to ear infections. He had ear infections often. And for whatever reason, the pediatrician never wanted to do like this surgery to put tubes in his ears. So he just he would get over an ear infection. He'd be good for a week. He'd have another. It was just one of those things.
So I thought that was a question I had. I talked to you earlier about that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that happens a lot. A lot of the little guys, especially that preschool age, are prone to all those ear infections, and things aren't draining properly. And that's all, ENT, it's all connected, especially when they're developing sounds and language, and how they're hearing the sounds is very important from that early age. So if you're not hearing properly, you've got fluid in your ears, your ear infections, you need tubes, you have adenoids, all the things. That's what the SLPs know their stuff at that age and how to pick up with where those guys are at. But when he exited preschool, I believe we talked about this, he just had a speech IEP. So he had no classification that required him to have an educational IEP. His case manager became the speech therapist, and he managed his IEP because it wasn't classroom based. It was a pull-out program for speech.
Right.
Are you okay?
See, I'm kind of glad that you came on because, during obviously the trial for, the murder of Corey, it was said by by the Gregors mostly, that, you know, Corey came to them, and he wasn't potty trained and he couldn't speak. I mean, basically, they acted like they plucked him out of the wild and he was raised by wolves or something, you know, and that he had, you know, an IEP, he was emotionally disturbed and possibly autistic. And, you know, they just had this idea that, you know, Corey just had the most horrific life until they came around.
Really, it's the other way around.
You have to laugh out loud because Corey was alive before they came around. He was fine. DCP&P wasn't involved. They didn't come to the school because they were called. I mean, you would know that because you were his teacher.
I would have been the one doing the calling if I
report. Exactly.
observed anything. Like it wouldn't be my first time making a call. We would always consult with the child study team, just so we're all on board, because, you know, the teacher alone isn't expected to make that call in a school setting because you're surrounded by your team. In other settings, you would make that call, but no, I've called with other members of the team for other cases, but not even a question in that instance.
Right. But people don't know that because they, you know, they only know what they said. Obviously, a lot of people know what we've always said, but it just made me feel so good to have you, an educator, saying what we've already said. You know, it just, you know, to me, I'm at the point where I don't really care what people believe anymore. They're going to believe what they want to believe. But it just kind of made me feel good to have you come on here and just say this is how it happened.
Yeah, I mean, I don't ever sugarcoat it. Like I said, his language was very colorful, like any other kid at that age, but he was smart. So he knew how to use certain words and phrases and get a reaction out of people. And that's where the whole concept of consequences comes in. So that's a big one that I have always taught. And it's something that a lot of adults kind of forget. So in the behavior world, in like the ABA, applied behavior analysis world, where you really focus on more of those kids with autism and special needs, or adults. But what people don't realize is we do ABA every single day. And somebody once gave me the example of like, well, you have a job, right? You go to work, you get a paycheck. If you don't go to work, do you get paid? If you have a salary, yeah, you have your sick days. If you don't go to work, you don't get paid. That's the consequence. And if you do go to work, you do get paid. Great consequence. A consequence doesn't have to be negative. It's just what happens as a result. So we did a lot of ABC data with Corey, which is antecedent, what happens right before, behavior, what he does, and the consequence. So any child in my class, my paras that worked with the students, we all had the same system for behavior. So anything that Corey learned from the time he was 3 to 5, when he left our program and moved out of Jefferson, we, the family, the friends, the staff, the teachers, the paras, the kids, learned all that together. If you threw a toy at a kid in the class because you didn't want to do your work, well, first you're going to do your work, and then you can go pick up all the things while that kid is outside playing, and now you can go acknowledge that kid. But a lot of times kids will do things to escape, and Corey definitely knew how to do that because he was very smart. But he learned the consequence of doing those things was you don't always get things the way you want, and sometimes you have to do certain things to be safe and to learn and to grow. And I remember one of the very first little interviews I did with Bree back in 2021 was me demanding justice and consequences, because the Gregors seem to be this family that just keeps getting lucky with who they are and where they're from and who they know, and they can portray themselves in a certain way. But you can't argue the fact that antecedent, Corey was alive and well and thriving, and then started to become abused and vocalize all of these problems. So the problem with them was that they now have this little boy to deal with.
Excuse me, I just want to interrupt. Some people are saying that they can't hear. So I just want to ask everybody if they can just respond. Stacy, Stacia, Kathleen, can you hear okay?
Yeah, somebody was saying it sounded like we were all talking over each other, but
All right. Someone said they can hear.
okay. Maybe it was just
Yes.
their
Okay.
connection.
Kathleen said okay. Sorry to interrupt.
All good. All good.
Okay.
So the antecedent was Corey went to see this new family, and the behavior was that he was abused, and the consequence was he's no longer here. I mean, it's very clear that the abuse started because Chris had to be a father figure as per his, I would assume, family influencing how they would want to appear. So you have to be a dad that sees their child. But if you have your own things going on, the consequence of how you interact with that child is going to look so much different than if it was a situation where he had always known Corey. There's just a lot with consequences where certain people aren't experiencing any justifiable consequences. Corey, the consequence was that he did his best and he still isn't here. He learned, he did all the right things. He was a busy little boy that just had his entire life modified and altered and was now learning how to exist in this environment that boy knows. He could read rooms, he could read people. He knew it wasn't a healthy, loving setting like he had been used to.
Kristin, do you have any stories from the classroom or anything like that?
I was just going to get into the next point. So a lot of the kids that I had in my class were high functioning autism, or they not aged out, but they moved out of like a more restrictive setting. So a lot of them sitting at the carpet, they would need like a chair that supported their backs and their sides, and we had fidgets and things to wiggle with. But my one parrot would literally like just pound on Corey's back. So you know how like when you're a baby and you do the whole like just like on his shoulders, on his back, the more input he got, the better. So as much as he liked to move and groove, that boy, I don't know if you know what butterfly kisses are, but that boy would melt with butterfly kisses. So like, he'd be wild and this and crazy and jumping. And then like, I'd be sitting next to him, and I don't know how it started because, they're all my babies and my children, but the little eyelashes on the cheek, such like a soft, gentle little sensory input. And I still I can remember him, like the little cheek leaning in and the little butterfly kisses and him just like relaxing and decompressing. That's definitely one of my favorite ones. I don't do that with just any of the kids I have, but he needed it. We always know what the kids need, and whether he needed his shoulders and his back pounded or vibrations, he loved those butterfly kisses.
You mentioned that he can read a room.
He could smell your fear. Like, he was intense. So if you came in and you were like a little, he's like, oh, okay. I'm going to give you a run for your money.
I think he could read you. I think he had you smitten.
Oh, for sure. We were besties. He used to say, what did he call me? Oyen, because the S's. So it was Oyen. And I'm like, yeah, I got you. He had best friends. He had a little boy that he was in his daycare with. They were like brothers, best friends and enemies. The girls, he was pretty tolerant of the girls in the class. We had more boys than girls, but I was telling Rebecca, my ex had given me his iPad for the kids. So, it was cleaned and modified, edited, whatever. I had like a little sensory tent. It was like a big tent. And I hear this music coming from the tent. And I go over and I'm like, I need my phone to video this. And it's Corey and another little guy in the tent, like jamming out, rocking out. And I don't know if everybody knows like screamo type music. I don't really want to do it, but it's basically just like you can't hear the words. So it's just like rock and heavy. And then it's like, and he was just jamming out. Like they're laughing. I'm like, what are you even listening to right now? Like, what did you find? And then again, that little laugh, that little giggle, like he knew what he was doing. We taught preschool in a church for a few weeks. One of the other schools had mold for the beginning of the school year. So we up and went to a church and we started preschool in a church. And I just always I think of that year and Corey in his, first day, September of preschool. And I had a new para that we had been working with and he smelled her fear. And she didn't last very long after that. But I just still remember him being just Corey and he knew it. He was big energy. He was a big energy. And it hurts my soul that not everybody gets to know that side of him. They just see this beaten down little boy. And that's not who he is. He became that, but to no fault of his own. He fought as much as he could until his spirit was just taken away from him.
He's strong. How old was he? When did you stop teaching him?
So he started when he was 3. It was October, so he was 3.5.
Right.
And then I had him October to June, and then we did summer school. So I had him July
till kindergarten
and then September we split him. So he was with my class in the morning and another teacher in the afternoon. Just to generalize behaviors and skills. So we did,
5 years old?
Yeah, until he was 5, probably 5 in April, 5.5. So 2.5 years with summer school.
Wow. Okay.
So that's the beauty of preschool. They can start at 3 and stay till 5. They can get 3 years out of preschool. So he got the 2 and then left for kindergarten.
Do you remember when I wrote in the little communication book that he was going to meet his father? I mean, he'd met Chris before as a newborn. Chris came snooping around and stuff. But do you remember the first time Chris was going to come and Corey was going to meet him? I wrote it in the communication book to you. And you said what? You didn't think it was a good idea, did you?
I can literally remember sitting at the table and reading that and being like, well, this is interesting. Because he had already changed so much from that 3-year-old to a 4-year-old. And I remember you saying he's a special education teacher. And I mean, I remember this clearly. I remember reading it and being and I think I probably wrote hopefully that'll be really good for Corey. I don't remember, but I'm not going to be this sounds bad. I'm going to be supportive. It just really is interesting that I remember it so clearly. When I spoke with you, I'm you still have the communication book, right? You're oh yeah, it sticks with me so much. So I don't know if a lot of people know, but there is a very strong connection with Corey and my new path in life. But if his story inspired me instead of making me feel we all say we could have done something differently. If he had been in my class in preschool when he started to see Chris, I would have known that something was different logically. But I feel collaboratively, we would have been able to continue to communicate the way we had the past 2 years and said something doesn't feel right. His behaviors are changing. So let's look back at ABC data. Something's changing. What happened? He starts to see his dad now. What is his new behavior? Whatever that might look like when he started with a school that didn't know him the way I did.
And trust. I mean, knowing you for so long, for how many years, and knowing your relationship and trust is a big thing.
So I think all the time,
to a teacher.
If I had just said I don't know, if he's it's something I know I can't do, but instead of saying like I would have helped somehow, I am helping now, however I can. We can't go back. We can't let that teacher that he had know, like, hey, don't pick up the phone, document everything, go through the right protocols. But it was also COVID. Like, everything was wild. And Corey just slipped through the cracks.
If I might add, the teacher testified at the trial, and I was there every day, and there was clear concerns that were communicated.
But you know what happened? She picked up the phone and called Chris, and then Chris kept him home and did virtual after that. I mean,
yeah.
My assumption. Go ahead.
Yeah. COVID.
My assumption would be wild times. She was probably younger. It might have been her first experience with, a child presenting in a certain manner with marks and just.
Rebecca, did she say she spoke to the child study team social worker though?
She did testify that she went through the proper protocol, I guess. But because of COVID, Chris had the ability to keep Corey home on virtual. She did, I believe she testified that she thought that was odd that he all of a sudden was now virtual, but I guess they couldn't beat the door down. They reported it, and then it was
DCP&P
who, I guess the school couldn't say you need to do this or that. They turned it over to the proper authorities, and they failed. They didn't do what they should have done. And
DCP&P documented that they contacted, during that investigation, they contacted the nurse of the school as a collateral. She's the only person that wasn't probably in the room. The child study team was, the teacher was, and they allegedly spoke to maybe a letter or calling the school nurse who knew nothing. I don't think about it. But that's another. But the teacher, certainly had concerns and brought it to someone else's attention and was devastated that she wished she could do something else, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, she's another person that teachers are second family. Like, a lot of times kids with working families, they wake up, they go to daycare, they get on the bus, they come to school, they get their breakfast, they get their lunch, they get their snack, they go back to daycare, they go home, they get their bath, they get their dinner, repeat. So teachers, a lot of instances are that's their family. They spend the most time during the week with those kids, those teachers. That's their little family. So of course you're going to feel the impact of losing a student, whether you've had them forever ago, still it's.
And that's one of DCP&P's best strategies is to interview a child in a neutral environment, such as the school, with a school nurse, teacher present or near the next room, because they do feel safe and they have that relationship and they're not as fearful. And that wasn't done with Corey in the many 11 referrals, maybe, or more.
No, he was always interviewed with Chris in the room. And as a matter of fact, photos that were taken of his injuries, Chris was holding him in the photos. You can see Chris in the photos. So
I noticed that.
Yeah, that was really, I don't know. I'm not a DCP&P social worker person, but to me, I don't think that was probably the right way to do it.
I mean, just being in a school system for so long, there's protocol, there's a system. Like, you contact, when I was teaching older kids, there was an incident with a writing activity we did, and I was like, I don't know about this. And I went to the guidance counselor, and we sat in the principal's office, and we called together. Like, it strengthened numbers, and his numbers just became against him. Everything just became against him.
Absolutely. Kristin, I remember meeting you the first time after, unfortunately, and you were part of, the initial Justice for Corey crew, you know, and then you had moved away and gotten another job, and you know, it's
Lots of
been a
things.
while.
Lots of things
Yeah.
happened. No, I spoke at the memorial, the 1 year memorial, right?
Was
It
it
wasn't
the,
a 2
I
year.
believe it was the very first,
Yeah.
the butterfly release, right? I think.
No, not the butterfly release, because I was there. It was before the butterfly release,
It was, okay.
I
Yeah.
think, because yeah, I'm
It
not
was
sure which one.
2021. It was definitely 2021, yeah. And I was teaching, I think I was teaching kindergarten. Everything's like a blur post COVID 2021. But as soon as I found out, so we'll get like a nice story. Speaking of the butterflies, we always used to hatch butterflies every like spring in my classroom for as long as I could remember. Not the nice, beautiful monarchs, the little painted lady, like they come in the mail. They're orange. It works. So the 2019 year I had him, I have the video and he's looking at the butterflies. It's like me and him in the classroom, maybe another kid or two, everyone's coming in. And his speech was pretty good at that point. But for whatever reason, when he said open, he said bopen. So when he's talking to the little butterfly, he's looking at this freshly hatched butterfly and he's going, him bopen, him wings. I want to show my friend him bopping him wings. I love him. And like that melts my soul to this day. Like that little voice, so pure, just being like, I freaking love this butterfly. So the day I found out everything that had happened, the next day I was like taking like a just at home. And I remember I was taking the garbage out and this little orange butterfly, not a monarch, was erratically flying around me. And I was like, okay. So I go to the garbage and the butterfly lands on me. And I was like, okay, I get it. And it was just like this wild butterfly, like, and then I put the garbage out and it landed on me again. And I was like, cool. I pick up what you're putting down, universe. I don't really believe in coincidences. That was just strange. Like it was bizarre. It was not a monarch. It was like an erratic little
Freezing up.
Breaking up. Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear.
You're good. You're good.
I can hear.
That was
sorry. Marissa is asking if the other teacher ever called CPS. I'm not sure which teacher.
I think she meant the one we were speaking about. And I think the answer would be yes. The school called DCP&P for the teacher. Is that correct, Rebecca?
I guess the teacher told guidance.
Guidance, the social worker.
Who made the phone call, but the teacher did report it. I don't know if she's referring to that teacher that testified in court or if she was referring to maybe any of the other teachers, but.
Okay, yeah.
So
the one that we were speaking about.
In preschool, he had me, and then he had me and another teacher in Jefferson. Then he went to kindergarten where he had a kindergarten teacher and then a speech therapist. And then COVID, I want to say. So then his first grade year was 2021.
And that's the teacher. I think it was COVID and it was 2021.
Yeah.
So
so that was first grade.
Yeah. You know, his kindergarten teacher, that's when we left Jefferson and we moved to Central Jersey and he went to kindergarten here. And things were happening, but they were always explained away, like injuries that were happening to him. Like the teacher was kind of like, you know, she would see things, but it would be explained, you know, oh, he fell, he did this. So it didn't get really bad until Chris moved to Barnegat with Corey. That's when things got really bad because I guess he he didn't have so many people to answer to, and he was in his own apartment. Now he could do what he wanted. And things just progressively, obviously, got worse.
Rebecca, the real psychopaths, the real sickos are the ones that know how to hide it and hide the injuries. And the ones that, injure children, they're out of control, they got an anger problem, they're not as cunning and can't get over on, but I'm just saying that.
Chris was very, he was always planning a defense. That's what I call it, because he even told his downstairs neighbor in the new apartment, "Oh, my son is autistic. So if you hear a lot of noise, it's just him acting out." He was already planning, like he knew she was going to hear noise because he was beating the fuck out of Corey all the time. Of course she's going to hear noise, but he explained it away so she wouldn't alert anybody. Oh, that's just that poor little autistic kid having one of his episodes.
Yep.
That's planful. Very
intelligent. I mean, there's a level of intelligence for sure that's required to be able to get away with things and hide things. And I've said all along, and I always say it, among teachers, you always say like apples and trees. And there's so many instances where then you meet the parents and they're ADHD themselves, and you're like, apples and trees. They're like, "Oh yeah, I've been diagnosed since I was in 6th grade." I'm like, well, we get it. But I've always felt like, I always say hurt people hurt people. What happened in your life or is still happening that made you cause such harm to the point of murder to a tiny human you created? The best thing you ever did with your life was create this small human. So are you jealous? Are you projecting your own abuse, whether emotional, physical, negligent, from your own life onto him? There's a lot of research behind parental roles and generational trauma and abuse and patterns. And I don't know, I've always just picked up on that vibe that you learn your behavior from somewhere.
Right.
Where does that anger and that intensity and that violence come from? Because I can tell you without a doubt, the anger that Corey had within himself was, of course, frustration from not being able to communicate. But that anger comes from somewhere. And he loved Jima. Like, even when he was being taught not the kindest things to say about her from Chris, he still, that was his lady and mom. Like, his girls were his world. Nikki, mommy, Jima, that he talked about them all the time. We had their pictures in the classroom. We had a little class bulletin board, and those were the pictures in the classroom. So where does the anger that he had come from? That's within him. That's passed down. And I'm sure there's a lot of speculation about where that could come from, passed down from one to the next. But that's just always stuck out to me. I empathize with people. It's my biggest downfall and my greatest blessing is, like, I will see these horrific things and I'll see, like, that murderer was someone's son, daughter, child, sister, brother. But it reached a point where they did something so just violent that it stems from somewhere. Like, if you're harming a child that is your own child and blood, like, the psycho-analytical, there's a lot to delve into.
I've spoken to someone that knew him in high school and indicated firsthand knowledge of him having anger issues and being a bully and being physical to other students that were more vulnerable and, into lockers or, severe kind of bullying, not just taunting. Any kind of bullying is horrible, but, really bad bullying. So it was their teenage years. So I think, Rebecca has an idea where it sort of came from. There are a couple of questions here. One was saying that they were talking about the first grade teacher, and the answer was yes, she indeed did reach out to, her social work team, and they did call DIFUS, and a referral was made, and they did the investigation, and it was unfounded, I believe, technically, even though there was injuries. And then I don't know if there's anything else. Another one. You're talking about his personality, like this is why that light started working for you during the holidays. Don't lose hope. Rebecca hugs.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was it. It was a first grade teacher. Yeah, that was it. Oh, and then it said, yes, abusers, especially that have influence from a father in a police force too. And that is another thing. Did you ever have the chance to interact with Chris or his father as at the end, because it was too soon at that point?
Yeah, it was like a very new, like, he's going to start seeing him. We think this will be really good for him.
See, so you were there for the excitement of a possible dad for him?
Yeah. Yep. He didn't verbalize it, but it was like a preemptive.
Like everybody else in school. He would see at daycare, the dads coming and picking, and he wanted to know where his dad was. He wanted to have a dad. And I've said this before, Brianna was so against Chris being around. And I thought she was just being a ridiculous teenager, like, oh, how bad, I should have listened to her. I just really thought she was just being a brat about it, and I thought, oh my gosh, Chris has a master's in special education. His family is well educated. His father's a retired state trooper. I mean, these people are going to be wonderful. We're going to have, Corey has us, and he's going to have these great people. What could go wrong? I remember thinking that, like it was going to be so good for him.
So the idea had just come in, Kristin, where dad was coming into the situation at that age, because you were 3 years old and he was about 4.5 when he got involved with his dad.
Yeah.
So you were towards the end.
Unfortunately, I would have really liked to have had some time with him. I will jump around and say, I mean, I don't think it's like a secret thing. The trial's over. And tying in with what Rebecca said about the Gregors taking credit for the human that Corey was, false. But that is a very infuriating point. But I can speak to it. I was called by the prosecutor's office as a potential witness, but for Chris, they wanted to state that he had a diagnosis of, I don't even remember what diagnosis, emotionally disturbed, something along those lines. But as I previously explained, every preschooler with an IEP was a preschool child with a disability. So therefore, that's untrue. You can go back into Jefferson's records of IEPs, which Rebecca and I have spoken about, and nowhere in that report will it say anything about emotional disturbances, anything along those lines, because that wasn't the case.
So that was a lie. So that was a lie on the stand where he presented. Yes.
I mean, I just know that the prosecutor stated like they knew it wasn't going to be anything, but they were, I guess, going to use my knowledge of him in preschool to say like he was XYZ when really like that was
well, Kristin, he brought it in his testimony, but had nothing to back up anything. It was just a story about how his opinion of how Corey was.
So in preschool, we're very big on, well, me as a human, I'm very big on like social emotional regulation, identifying emotions. Yes, I teach you letters, numbers, shapes, sizes, colors, how to wipe your butt, stand on line, be kind to friends. But you need to grow up to be a human being that has empathy and can understand others, especially in a world where you're generalized by your condition, your special need. Corey learned how to regulate his emotions, and they were very big emotions and very explosive emotions, but he learned to channel it. He loved Sonic the Hedgehog. He loved yoga. He loved moving his body in appropriate and constructive ways to get his needs met without aggression. And we worked our butts off to reach that point. And he's not the only one that was aggressive at age 3, 4, 5 to peers, because you don't have the language to be like, hey, I don't like that. So what do? You push them out of the way. And then you get in trouble because you push someone, but not in my world. You always look at the antecedent. What happened? I don't have the words to say move and you stepped on my foot, or I really want to play that game with my friend and you just knocked the board over. So I'm going to push you because I don't like that. Chris sounds like a giant grown-up child that didn't learn to regulate his emotions, and now he's a murderer. So this is why early intervention and social skills are imperative at any age, but especially for the 0 through 5 age group. And sadly, everyone in the world wants their child to get ready for kindergarten and know their letters and their numbers. But first things first, let's give them a voice, even if their vocal voice isn't as strong or powerful as it can be, and make sure that however they need to be heard is being heard, and however they need to be seen is being seen. And Corey, just that never happened for him after his time in Jefferson. I feel like there were so many big changes, kindergarten and a new place and a new family and a new father. It was just so many things that happened against him. Like, talk about butterfly effect. The wings just kept flapping on that one. And a tough little boy, just couldn't stay tough and keep up with a monster, basically. But that's not the little guy that we knew in preschool. I had to break the news to basically all of Jefferson. Nobody knew. I told all the teachers at summer school the next morning. I told the paras that loved him and worked with him. I called his teacher that I taught with. Jefferson knows about it because of Rebecca attempting to reach me, to me learning, to us connecting. We had a candlelight vigil at his favorite park in the whole world in Jefferson, and I feel like maybe 15 people came. Jefferson's a big town, but when you don't have the support of influential members of the community, it's hard to get strength in numbers. Like, Justice for Corey has hundreds of thousands of millions and billions of people that have heard about him. You go to Jefferson and nobody even knows that their preschool child in their district was killed by his father.
Isn't that horrible? How can you not know? How do you
Yeah.
know? Or do you not want to know, because then you'll have to admit the world isn't a perfect place? I don't know. I mean, I don't know what. I was very shocked that we didn't get more supporters from that area, because Corey did spend quite a bit of time there in the daycare center. He went to a daycare center plus school. I mean, I was really shocked that, it just wasn't a big deal there.
That things don't happen in some people's worlds.
Yeah, they just, if you ignore it, it goes away, or it didn't happen, and it's unfortunate, because Corey spent a lot of time with a lot of kids in that district. And, it's very upsetting that they just didn't acknowledge what happened to him.
And there were absolutely parents that did, and they share the photos of the class on social media, and they think about how they're gonna, at the time they're like, what do I even tell my son? Like, my son himself has special needs. How do I even begin to articulate this? Like, this is, I don't know. I don't have the answers to that. But the fact that people weren't even given an opportunity to get to know the story. And don't get me wrong, like we had members of the police department come. The mayor was amazing. His wife was there. Students in the class, their families came, friends of mine came. But at the end of the day, the people that were meant to be there were there. The people that were meant to know him knew him. And if you didn't get to be a bigger part of all of this and having his name lived on, I feel worse for you than I feel for him for not having your support. Like you missed out. You missed out on this little human that influenced so many people by being so brave. But I don't know. I just feel very lucky to have known him before he had to fight for his life. Like I feel very honored that the best years of his very short life were spent in the four walls of my classroom. And ironically, like that's the thing that I wanted to leave behind the most with teaching, was that I was stuck in those four walls. And if I had another situation like a Corey, I could have contacted Jima and mom, and we could have counteracted all the evil that was against him. Like I love my police officers. My father's retired police officer, and he was one of the first people. I'm pretty sure he met Corey because he would come in and read to the class. Mm-hmm. And he was one of the first people that said, like, he'll get his in one way or another. And I don't know that, but he got his by never getting to know an amazing tiny human that was just sadly here for a minute and then gone. But my like life's mission is to just make sure like you know that child's name. And I don't want you to just Google his name and see the bruises and the bumps. I want you to see that picture of him holding up his I love mommy sign that he wrote by himself, because I knew he could write it by himself. And I pushed him and I challenged him. I mean, that boy stabbed me in the foot with a fork.
Did he write that famous picture in your classroom? I love mommy, the sign, because I remember. I love that picture. Mm-hmm. I love that picture. That's
right against the wall. Oh yeah, that was a good one. And he wrote it by himself because he was brilliant.
Has that tattooed on her.
I know. I love that.
I love that. He's very smart. I mean, he may have had the speech, and like every 3-year-old, you know, in a new setting with other children, different ages, different needs, so on and so forth. I bet he was the smartest in the class. Just saying.
He's so smart. I mean, they were all very gifted in their own way, but he just grew to love so many things. Like he was the fastest kid I ever met. That boy was fast. And I'm pretty fast, and he was fast. As he got older and we were working on like behavior modification and reinforcement, when we used to do like a tangible reinforcement, like a lollipop, you eat it, it's gone, rather than an iPad where you have to give it up. He loved cheese puffs, but I think his go-to was the marshmallows in the Lucky Charms. Homeboy didn't want the Lucky Charms. He wanted just the mallows. And like, yes, 1000%. But he would just want the little marshmallows. And then as he got a little bit older, all he wanted to do was get pictures printed out so he could color. He just wanted to do art and just move his body, and he just wanted to do everything. He just wanted to do it all. Yeah. And I love that I got to be part of exposing him to so many things. Some things he didn't like, but I have so many photos of him trying spicy cinnamon when we did taste test and pretending to be a bee and having honey and just walking in and learning how to do his zipper on his jacket and waiting his turn. Like just so many little moments that I have video of and photos of that I was able to share with the families. But I mean, I know I have moments that I can't give to you guys. I can't give to his baby sister, but I hope to just be able to share as much as is in my brain that I can. And I mean, I kind of feel like it's just part of my job and being his preschool teacher that I have to share the little version of him I got to know with whoever wants to know about it. He's not just a victim. Like, everybody sees this horrific thing and they're like, this poor little boy. Obviously, this poor little boy, but he wasn't always just a poor little boy. He was a warrior, a conqueror, a fighter, a love bug. Like, he was all
I think Brianna did a really good job during the trial. Like, there was a very well developed, child. His interests that he developed, later on as he got older, past, into first grade.
Yeah.
But yeah, all that, everything you said, I think Brianna did a good job of also sharing,
I'm sure.
During the trial, that he just
brilliant.
Had
so much to give and share that he learned at such a young age that he could pass on. And I always think, like,
special. Something very special. Yes.
What could he have shown the world more than he's showing the world now, not being here? Like, it's when they're in preschool, they don't know who they even are. Nonetheless, what they want to be when they grow up, they don't even know what that means. But he was a ninja, and he was Sonic the Hedgehog, and he liked the little creepy Addams Family song on Go Noodle, like, just good stuff in that little world. But things change. COVID happens. Schools close. People move. New people come. There's just too many variables that happened. But I'm just looking up, and there's his little flower. I'll give you a little unplug the laptop. So when I actually have some stuff that Corey had written, because we used to do a class pet. Now, I don't remember who the class pet was when I had him.
It was an elephant.
It was the elephant, right?
Yes.
It was the blurple elephant.
I hated that damn elephant. We had to do so much with it. It drove me crazy, but
that's not true. That's not true at all. All I had to do was bring it home, keep it alive, maybe take some pictures, draw some.
Yes. It had to be a part of our lives I forgot how long they kept it for.
A weekend. Just
the weekend. It felt like 2 weeks, but anyway.
I loved it. I like show and tell, show and share, not my vibe. Take home the class pet, have experiences so you can talk about it, write about it, draw. I'm sure you have those somewhere. But
I do.
Right? Because I always gave them back.
Yep.
My class mom was amazing. And we each got a bouquet with the kids' pictures, or I think the parents did a picture. So that was the school picture. And then they wrote their names on the back, and it was in a bouquet with all gift cards. So I feel like this is like a celebrity's autograph right there.
Oh, look.
Hard to see, but it's green.
I see it.
I'll try to get better light. It's just funny. I was looking up, like, what else do I have to say besides everything in the world? And his little picture was staring at me. Let's see if I can.
Is that Toddy Skip that came on?
Oh, maybe. I haven't been looking at
There it is.
At 9:02. Hi, Toddy. Okay. You on?
I had a question and I forgot. I don't even know.
I talk so much.
I guess, it's hard to predict or to say what do they say? Shoulda, woulda, coulda kind of thing. But I can't help but think if we were still in Jefferson, you were still in Corey's life as a teacher, and this was happening, I think Corey would have told you. Because there's that trust. I think he would have eventually told you what was happening to him. And I think
Kristin, if you saw him come in with what injuries he came into school with, there's no way I
would have immediately looked at the bus driver, been like, and then I would have looked in the communication book, and then I would have went to the case manager, and she probably would have had the nurse come in.
Can I just share something right there? I just want to share that each school district may have a protocol, okay? But there's New Jersey statute that says every individual, regardless of your title, that is aware or suspects child abuse and neglect is required to call it in. Mm-hmm. So Kristin, sometimes if you go through a bureaucracy, and I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about like any school teacher, aide, para, cafeteria worker, maintenance, anybody in the school district, instead of like going up to the bureaucracy to the principal, then the superintendent and PR and all the, whatever, and you have to go into a corner, and they always want to speak to the person firsthand anyway.
Mhm.
The person that is suspecting of it, not the third hand, fourth hand person.
No.
The person that's the closest to the story or that is aware. So I just want to say that to any school teacher. I don't think they would fire you. You can call and report it, then say, by the way, here I called and reported it, and this is why. But
at the end of the day, it's you. Yes, you represent that school and that district, but at the end of the day, you have to live with yourself. One of my previous jobs working with kids, I was young and I picked up the phone and I called Jefferson at the time and I was like, yeah, no, I don't like this and I'm calling. Even like a couple weeks ago, I was in the car and there was somebody driving in front of my boyfriend and I for a while, like dangerously slow, and he's complaining and he's like this, and I picked up the phone and I called the police. He's like, why did you do that? I'm like, because if that person gets in a car accident and kills someone, I could have picked up the phone and called the police and at least done my part to prevent it. And he's like, okay, yeah, you're right, I'm sorry. I'm like, no, I know that.
Yeah.
If you can do your part, ask for forgiveness over permission. Sorry,
I don't want anyone to get fired, so like definitely follow your school's protocol. But I would insist to be present maybe during that call. You know that it occurs.
I think that is the both times I've called. You're not alone, but you're right there with.
Yeah. But if they want to overrule you and say, no, we're not calling because of the parents are ABC, we've called before, they haven't done anything, or any kind of excuses, but you still have serious concerns of abuse and neglect, you could call anonymously, or you could just say
contact your union rep, contact your union rep
or
right away.
just you don't want to risk your job or anything, but it's state law that if you have a concern, you call it in. So that should supersede policy, maybe. I don't know.
I agree.
Well, I know it's getting late, but I just wanted if Kristin could just let everyone know about the event taking place, the polar plunge, the date. I mean, a lot of these people are not from here, but if you could just share that with everyone, what you're doing, and that would be great if you could just let everybody know.
So the Special Olympics, I guess New Jersey chapter does a polar plunge in Seaside Heights, which is, Jersey Shore status. And it's for Special Olympics, which I'm very close to Vernon. Mountain Creek does a whole big Special Olympics torch run and everything. So this is for all Special Olympics New Jersey. So obviously like close to my soul. And I met up again with Rebecca and we were talking and kind of did a little play on words. So we're going to get cold for Corey because at the end of the day, he had unique needs just like everybody else. But I met him because he was a special needs child in my class, Special Olympics. Even if he wasn't a special education student, that boy would have jumped in the ocean for some friends for sure. So get cold for Corey. It's the polar plunge, March 14th. I have a team page, but I think it's going to be live streaming. So you can even just watch and imagine. I can hear Corey's voice like running in the ocean, like that little scream being like, ah, and going back for more. So Rebecca has the page. We're going to do a little, we can video and just a whole little like nod to Corey. I just want to do positive things in his honor, not just dwell on the sad things. I want him to live on through being able to help even when he's not here to help. So polar plunge, the Special Olympics does amazing things. They raise like millions of dollars. It's an incredible thing. And ironically, it's the state police that do a lot of the fundraising for it, which reminds us that just because you're in one category doesn't mean you are a good or not good person. Everybody is in their own category, whether they're a police
Kristin,
officer.
what town is the polar plunge
It's
in
in
Jersey?
Seaside. It's
Seaside, New
Seaside.
Jersey,
Seaside
and
Heights.
local enough for me to go. Close
Yeah.
enough. I'll be there with my winter coat.
I won't be there with my winter coat. I mean,
Maybe I'll wear a bathing suit under my winter coat for you, though.
As you should.
Does that count?
Absolutely. There's no
You're
rules.
not jumping in, no.
You can put a toe in. Like if anybody's feeling bold, you can literally be like, I did the polar plunge, and you touch your finger in the water.
I'm going to be 65 in June. I'm feeling like I want to do something like that. I don't know. I might do it.
I think you should. Yeah. So get cold for Corey. He would totally be pushing us all to do this. Like literally, he'd probably give us a little gentle push into there.
I'll walk in though, not run.
It's okay. No rules.
All right. I said that I was going to read a little bit of my book. Kristin, do you have time to stick around for a minute?
I'll make time, always.
Okay. If I can see it, I'll read a little bit. And I skip around. I haven't gone in any particular order because why would I do that? That would be too easy, right?
Gotta mix it up.
Yeah. So I'm just going to scroll a little bit, and wherever I stop is where I'm going to start.
You're very professional in your chair right now with your, today I'll read an excerpt from.
Yeah. I'm sitting here I have a sweater on, but my nightgown underneath. So that's how professional,
Amazing.
I am here. So, I'm trying to think. I don't remember what I've read to everyone already, but
Kristin was in it. You read with the part. Kristin was in it.
Oh, I did. Okay. Did I read the part about my interview with the Gregors prior to them meeting Corey? Did I tell everybody about that?
I don't think so.
News to me.
Okay, so if I did, anybody in chat remembers, then I'll stop. But let me just go back. So I'm going to start out where Corey's returned from that first unsupervised visit about an hour late. This was the visit where he picked Corey up from the last day of school at Milton. That was the first time he was actually taking Corey on his own, and I let him take him because his then girlfriend Katie was with him and she had a child. So I felt comfortable that Corey was going with him.
Yeah.
Bree still didn't know about this. I hid it from Brianna, and I'm not happy to say that, but I didn't tell her that Corey was going with Chris because she wouldn't have really wanted that to happen. But anyway, so Corey's returned from that first unsupervised visit about an hour late. I'm not going to lie. I panicked thinking maybe Chris kidnapped him. So Chris brings Corey back and he tells me his parents would like to meet Corey in July. Now, mind you, this is June. Okay. First time grandparents are going to schedule a meeting a few weeks out to meet their first grandchild. That's pretty fucked up if you ask me. But anyway, that's not in the book. I'm just ranting. So anyway, it's mid-June and these first-time grandparents want to pencil in a meet and greet with their grandson, whom they've never met, and they want to do this at a later date. Chris said they were going on a family vacation, and when they get back, he'll be in touch. Family vacation. You forgot your son, asshole. I don't know about you, but if I heard I have a grandchild, you bet your ass I'm going to go see that child ASAP. So I say, okay, sure, we can set that up. And we were moving back to Central Jersey in July, so it would be easy enough to make that visit happen. Well, needless to say, Brianna wasn't happy about any of this, and I wish I would have listened to her. Chris calls about a week later and tells me his parents are requesting a meeting with me first, not Bree. They wanted no part of her, and I believe it's because Kris told them so many lies about her, and if they met Bree, they'd see that Kris was not being truthful. So I go for what I called my interview with David and Carolyn Gregor. I was hopeful. After all, they were well educated. David had been a state trooper, so a police officer must be safe, right? I brought some pictures of Corey. David did most of the talking, and I think, well, this is odd, but maybe Carolyn was just nervous or maybe not. David had strange questions, like does Corey have special needs? Any learning disability? I told him that Corey was a bright, energetic, loving kid. I told him how Corey had been in a pre-K program in Jefferson Township for the last 2 years, and he had a great teacher, Kristin Oyen, who worked so hard to prepare Corey for kindergarten. The most disturbing question was, have you had any involvement with DCP&P? Now, why do you suppose he was asking me that? Well, I can tell you why. Because they had involvement because Kris had an open case for abusing Katie's son right around that time. But I didn't know this. Nobody bothered to tell me. And Katie, shame on you for running away and not telling me, because Corey might still be here. You still have your kid. Corey's gone. I hope you're happy. I hope you can sleep at night. Anyway, so it was an odd question at the time, but we would later find out that at that time there was an open DCP&P investigation involving Katie's young son. You know, the girl living with Kris in the Gregor home. After my interview with David and Carolyn, it was agreed that Corey would meet them the following week. It would be a few hours. What could go wrong? Kris picked Corey up and we agreed that he would drop him back off at 8 p.m. We were home awaiting Corey's return, hoping to hear what a great time he had with his dad and grandparents. My now ex-friend Karen was over, and Karen, Bree, Nikki, and me were anxious to hear all about Corey's visit. It was about 8:15 p.m., and Karen and I started getting a bit nervous. By 8:30, Karen suggested I call Kris. He didn't answer. I called David, and he did answer. I asked if Kris was on his way back with Corey. He said Corey will be spending the night here. We already bathed him, and he's ready for bed. Now, how odd. Can you imagine, Kristin, I'll ask you this, Corey just met these people and them putting him in a bathtub. How odd do you think that was for Corey? I mean,
like very inappropriate.
Right?
Yeah.
Like they felt the need to bathe him and get him ready. He was going to stay there. They were just going to keep him and not tell us. I mean, you know,
it's right there, like a red flag waving
right
at you right there, them being like,
right. And so I told him I didn't think it was a good idea because Corey really doesn't know them or Kris, and I recommended a few more visits before jumping into overnight visits. David said that his family had planned to keep Corey and that night, and he doesn't like change. David Gregor doesn't like change. So this wasn't working for him. I was telling him no, and apparently he's not used to hearing no. So he was very upset. Kris, they agreed to bring Corey home, and Kris arrived 20 minutes later and dropped Corey at the end of the driveway. And Corey came in through the garage door, and as he got into the light, into the house, you could see he had a busted lip and dried blood on his shirt and shorts. Brianna was frantic, and so were the rest of us. I called Kris, and he didn't answer. I called David, no answer this time. I called the Jamesburg police, and they told us to bring Corey down to headquarters so they could speak with him. We asked Corey what happened, but he wouldn't say a word. At the police station, he didn't talk. I explained how Corey's dad had just started seeing him, and tonight was the second unsupervised visit. The officer left the room and came back a bit later and told us he called SVU and DCP&P. We go home later, and Corey was playing in his Aunt Nikki's room. She asked him what happened and promised not to tell anyone. And I believe this is the statement that she recorded. And Corey told her that something so bad had happened. She asked what, and Corey replied, it was so bad. He finally told Aunt Nikki that he'd said a bad word, and Chris hit him in his mouth. We were shocked. The Gregors did not answer our calls. The next day, GCP&P go to the Gregor home to speak to the Gregors, where they were informed of the master's degrees that most of the Gregors held, and David's highly decorated career as a New Jersey state trooper. They were told Corey was injured while playing soccer or football, that Chris had kicked the ball and missed and kicked Corey in the face. GCP&P was also given a lot of information about me, most of it untrue, by Chris and his parents. And they seemed to focus on that and not what had happened to Corey at the Gregor home. There was one GCP&P caseworker, Allison, who could see something was not right at the Gregor home. She was taken off the case after David wielded a butter knife at her one evening when she was at the Gregor home after Corey suffered yet another mysterious injury. It was said that she was biased, but the truth is the Gregors couldn't manipulate her, so they had to make her go away. This is the same caseworker who told me that her supervisor would go through her reports and make her take things out, some very important things. I'd later find out from a retired Ocean County GCP&P caseworker that this was common practice. After Allison was taken off of Corey's case, Stacy appeared. Stacy was easily manipulated by the Gregors. She was impressed by their home and intimidated by David's police career and the fact that Chris had a master's degree. Stacy seemed to dislike me right away, and I assumed it was because Chris and David fed her lies about me. If anyone took the time to really think about Corey's situation, they would have noticed that we had zero GCP&P involvement until Chris came into the picture. But nobody seemed to notice that. At some point, Chris had to have supervised visits due to a drug charge. Stacy was in charge of picking Corey up from our house and supervising the visits. Brianna had no visits at this time because she failed the drug test. Seems strange, Chris was arrested on a drug charge but was still permitted to see Corey, but Bree was not given the same opportunity. I've said this before and you will hear me say it often. Brianna was not a daily drug user and never around Corey. I would not tolerate that. So Stacy comes to get Corey for a supervised visit and Corey is screaming and crying. He doesn't want to go. He locked himself in the bathroom. Stacy did not find this odd and still took Corey kicking and screaming. The second time this happened, I was at work and my daughter Nikki was at home with Corey. Once again, Stacy was trying to force Corey to go. He was very emotional, hyperventilating. Stacy asked Nikki to accompany Corey on the visit, which was very uncomfortable for Nikki. The third visit never happened because I was not allowing Corey to be subjected to these forced visits. Nikki called me at work while Stacy was trying to physically carry Corey out of our house. I was on speaker and I told Stacy to get the fuck out of my house, that Corey was not going. I will include court orders, etc. If I still have them, they will be included in this book. There were numerous GCP&P reports. Every time Corey would come back from Chris's house with an injury, we'd make another report that was always unfounded because they would question Corey while Chris was present. And Chris would make accusations against me, never against Bree, always against me. He always told GCP&P that Bree was a drug addict, but never once accused her of abusing Corey or neglecting Corey. He accused me because he wanted me out of the picture, because he couldn't manipulate me. None of his accusations were ever proven to be true, but he tried to get me prosecuted at least twice. We were in and out of family court often. When I had custody of Corey, Chris never had a chance. I recall one family court hearing where Chris and I were told to send copies of our pay stubs in prior to the hearing. I sent mine, and when Chris started telling the judge that I couldn't provide for Corey, she blasted him, telling him she had my pay stubs but didn't get any from him. and that I'd done a fine job providing for Corey for 5 years. That same court hearing, I made Chris cry because I told him that he was a disappointment to his father and that he really didn't want anything to do with Corey, but his dad was forcing him so it wouldn't look so bad for the Gregors' image. I eventually gave Brianna custody back, and she and Chris each had 50-50 custody. That is when shit hit the fan. Chris started manipulating Bree from the start, changing schedules, trying to get Corey for all major holidays. Brianna had agreed for Corey to stay with Chris 3.5 days during the week so Corey could attend Monroe Township schools because it was a better district than where we were living in Jamesburg. This was before all the abuse and mysterious injuries started happening. I grew up in Jamesburg and loved the town, but the schools just didn't measure up to Monroe. Corey was in kindergarten in Barclay Brook School. Miss DePiro was his teacher. She was an old friend of my son Gino, very sweet girl. Corey was doing great. His pre-K teacher, Miss Kristin Oyen, had prepared him for kindergarten, and we had no doubt that Corey would be a good student. So the way the custody worked was Corey would stay with Chris at his parents' house in Monroe Monday and Tuesday, and Wednesday, Chris would send him to school Wednesday morning, and Bree picked him up from school Wednesday afternoon, and Corey would stay with us until Sunday night. On one particular Wednesday afternoon, Brianna picked Corey up immediately and immediately noticed what looked like rug burn on the side of his face. Once she got him home, she noticed the rug burn was down the entire one side of his little body. She asked what happened, and Chris said that his daddy made him run on a treadmill because he was fat. I'm going to end this here. I feel like I might have read this part already, but the treadmill incident was played in court, but that wasn't the one that I'm referring to. Apparently, Chris used the treadmill as punishment a lot. And the first time was in the Gregor household. And well, we know how all that ended. But anyway, I'm going to stop there. If I read that the last time I read, I apologize. I'll read again in the future, some more of the book. But yeah, so, early on, the abuse started in the Gregor household. David Gregor present. Mr. Retired State Trooper turned the other cheek, didn't look, didn't tell the truth, didn't protect Corey. He protected his son, the monster that he raised. He protected him and still is to this day. So that's where we're at. That's why I do these shows. That's why I talk about the things I talk about. I want everybody to know what happened to Corey. I want everybody to know that the Gregors were not these great people that did such good things for Corey. If that were true, Corey would still be here, and he's not. The whole book will come out. The whole truth will come out. Currently, Chris has filed an appeal. I think everybody here knows that. It's sealed. We're not allowed to know what it's based on because Chris has more rights than Corey ever had, apparently. So Chris is protected. Corey was not. And that makes me very bitter, as you all know how I feel about that. These criminals have so many rights and their victims have none. But anyway, I have, I'm looking forward to the polar plunge and watching Kristin and having some happier moments. I'm always sad, and it's just part of, it's how I'm going to be.
Mindy's muted.
Unfortunately, yeah, I don't know if she knows that, but I'm always going to be sad, but I do try to do some good. I do catch myself laughing from time to time. But
I was just saying, Kristin, you did a great job articulating the little development of Corey's character and some adorable little stories. It was so nice seeing you, really was.
Yeah, I'm glad you came on, Kristin, and Mindy. I thank you for coming on. And we should definitely do this again. I know we're going to try to. Well, obviously, the polar plunge is going to be broadcast, but I'm going to try to do it on my YouTube.
Yeah.
So hopefully everybody can tune in and watch that and be a part of it. So that's it. That's all I have for now. I just want to thank everybody for being here, Kristin, Mindy, and everybody who is currently here watching, and everyone who watches later. I appreciate all of you. And that's it for now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing your guy with the world.
Yes. And we're going to keep on. Rebecca's keeping everything moving forever. And I'm right by her side as long as she'll have me.
Yeah, we have to keep, if telling this story can save another kid from dealing with this somehow, then that's what we want to do. We're not done yet. There's a civil suit against DCP&P. I know that the way things work in this world, you can't punish those that were involved by taking their jobs or their pensions or whatever. The only way you can punish is by filing a lawsuit, and somewhere somebody puts a dollar amount on a kid's life. That's just how it works, unfortunately. I would prefer that all involved lost their jobs, their livelihood. The Gregors, I wish they would lose their lives. And I know people say you shouldn't say that, but it wouldn't upset me to hear that they were all no longer here, especially the two main characters, Chris and David Gregor. I would not stop to administer first aid to either one of them. I would step over them. I'd probably squat over them and piss in their face as they lay dying. And I mean that. And I know that sounds terrible. And, I'm a bitter, nasty, broken person. And my feelings, I would not save either one of them if I could. And the rest remains to be seen.
That's your feelings.
I have nothing but hate and resentment and bitterness towards those people. And it's never going to change. There'll never be a time that I forgive any of those people for what happened to Corey. It'll never happen. It's not happening. So.
No punishment is enough.
Marissa, real quick, is asking, why did I return custody to Bree? Because she should have always had custody. I only had it because the scumbag came into the picture and he was going to battle her and win. So that's why she should have always had custody. It was because of the circumstances that she didn't. I know a lot of people want to believe that Bree was laying in the gutter with a needle in her arm, and that's just not the case. I think Kristin could attest to Bree coming to some of the school parties and participating, and so he
was always well represented by one, if not several, family members.
Right. So, this idea that Bree was this strung out junkie, it just pisses me off. I don't even want to get started on that, but Bree should have always had custody of her son. There was no reason why she didn't have custody. It was her decision to relinquish custody to me for the battle that we were up against.
So. Rebecca, there's another live about the custody where you sort of have already gone into that you had initially decided that you would get some custody when she was younger, and you were first filing for benefits. And
it was because Chris was going to
then Chris was identified
with Chris, and she realized when Chris was going to be told that he had to do a paternity test, she knew he was going to fight her, and she felt
you felt you would be the better person to have.
Right. So
with health benefits, work.
Yeah, a lot of people don't understand how or why Bree didn't have custody. They just assume it was because she was out there in the gutter with the needle in her arm, and that's what the Gregors want you to think. But
no, it wasn't primarily because of drug use, is what my point was.
It wasn't because of drug use at all. It was because we were
doing your best,
getting ready to battle the royal family, and so. Anyway, that's that.
So Marissa said that, yes, I think that made it easier for Chris to get shared custody. Well, in New Jersey, it's very easy for a father to get shared custody if they're determined to have the paternity and they want custody, and there's no reason to deem them not able to have custody. Parents, fathers have rights in New Jersey to custody. So regardless, he was going to be getting half custody or full
He already
custody.
had, before Bree getting custody back, Chris and I shared custody. Even when I had custody, it was awarded, Chris was awarded 50-50 custody with me, that he lost pretty quickly after the drug charge.
Right.
He lost his custody briefly, but you didn't hear about that.
As soon as he found out he was a father, and his father found out that he was the father, that's when he was expressing interest in custody. Not all along, all the years that he knew that he was the dad.
No, he didn't want Bree to let anybody know about Corey, because it was going to ruin his life. His parents were going to disown him and stop paying for his school and, you know, living expenses, and he just didn't want anybody to know. And then
he found out.
Because
and that's why he got custody, shared custody.
Well, I think I think David Greger pushed for that because it was going to be an embarrassment that people were going to know that this illegitimate child existed, and what were they going to think about the Gregers not standing up and taking charge and raising him. So I think it was David Greger who pushed Chris, because Chris at one point, you know, he was going to give up all of his rights. He wanted nothing to do with him. He told Brianna, tell your current boyfriend I'll sign over my rights to him. He can raise them or whatever. He didn't want to be bothered, but his father couldn't live with that because that would embarrass the Gregers. And you can't do that to them, you know, because they're, well, you guys all know they're the,
yes,
you know, retired, highly decorated state trooper, master's degree and everything kind of family. So they couldn't be embarrassed by Chris not standing up and taking responsibility. So anyway,
that's
we went on a little bit longer than I expected, but thank you guys for letting me ramble on. As always, I tell everybody in the chat, if you ever have any questions, I'm always up to answer them and set the record straight. You know, that's what I do. But thanks again, everybody. And I'll talk to Kristin and Mindy probably tomorrow, and probably a lot of you in the chat. All right, everyone, have a good night. Thank you again for always supporting.
Bye. I'll talk to you, Kristin, for sure.
Yes. Have a good night.
Thank you. I don't know how to end it.
I'll do it. I'm trying. I don't either.